All right, what is up, YouTube? Finally got a day off here before the weekend, and I guess I'm gonna put this together here, attempting to do what everyone else is doing is making a ban list prediction, right? Um, Boring, obviously. Hopefully, we hear something soon because this is kind of demotivating, and right now, even playing Master Duel is not really enjoyable. So I think the only thing that's enjoyable right now about Yugioh is trying to make some ban list predictions here. Uh, so here's what I've come up with. Um, a lot of them are kind of going to be moving as I'm talking about it, and then show what the final result of what I came up with. Now, as far as this being a ban list where I'm saying this is what they're probably going to do based off their track record, probably not. But based off of what I'm seeing with the ban list, what I think is since they've taken so long with it, I think what they're going to do is a lot of cards. They're going to bring back stuff to make other decks competitive with the current tier, the tier one decks and stuff like that. And they're going to ban stuff that's too broken, but I think it's going to be a lot more bringing some stuff back than hitting stuff just because of how long it's taken. So maybe a little bit of this is kind of more of a wish list, um, community list, but I think it's pretty safe to say that it seems like a lot of these are safe predictions here. But regardless, more than anything, I just love comments on this video back and forth and debate. All comments are welcome. I'm not gonna get offended by any of this because Yu-Gi-Oh is just a fun game. I mean, anyone that gets offended by anything in Yu-Gi-Oh, I mean, just grow up. Like whatever, it's just a kid's game. You can't get offended by it. Whatever. It's just all fun and games. So, anyways, look at the ban list here. First thing, I think Flamebridge is just going to get hit. There's really no need. I mean, in Master Duel OCG, they bring down Snake Eye Ash, Wanted. You know, it's like there's no need for all that. Flamebridge is the only thing that makes the deck broken. Be able to target a card face up, bring it back, set as a spell trap, bring it back two monsters. I mean, if you just hit Flamebridge, the deck's just not tier zero anymore. It's still maybe a low tier one, tier two deck. It can still make big bodies and everything like that, but it's just not. I think that's the only thing we need to hit. It's just Flamebridge. I don't think original needs to be hit. That's what a lot of people I see are assuming is the original Sinful Spoils needs to be hit. But the thing is, this is what makes other fire decks playable. And if you hit this, then what you're doing is then if you hit original Sinfoil instead of Flamebridge, then still, yes, it does hurt the consistency of Snake Eyes, but they can still full combo if they have Flamebridge. They're still going to be, if not a tier zero deck, high tier one, right? So I don't think I don't think original is a good hit. I like original being the format because original bridges other decks to work. Like what are we talking about? Fire King's deck to work, Rescue Ace. How many other decks that I'm not thinking of? This is a great card. I think it's a great design card. This with Wanted, keeping Wanted at three is I think is great, and keeping this in the format, there's no need to ban that. I don't think so. So that I'm taking off the list, and I'm saying just Flamebridge, right? Now Flamebridge is a lot like Block Dragon. So Block Dragon's been banned forever; it's never coming back. So why does Flamebridge exist when Block Dragon's banned? So I think they're so similar. Just ban Flamebridge. You don't need to do anything else with Snake Eyes. Just ban this, and then it's a fair deck, right? Um, Beatrice, uh, really, I think when you're looking at, because that's the one thing Konami said is that they're going to be hitting the Snake Eye engine, they're going to be hitting Fiendsmith and Yubel, right? So for hitting Fiendsmith, I don't think they're going to hit any of the Fiendsmith monsters because they are making them a lot of money. I think what you do is you hit the extra deck monsters. Um, that's kind of a mistake that I think was made during previous ban lists, like for hitting Kashtira with it was you're hitting the extract monsters, or you're hitting the consistency of the deck rather than the extract monsters, right? So where with Snake Eyes, I think I'm sorry, particular with Fiendsmith is rather than hitting the Fiendsmith engine, just hit the extract monster. That's the problem, right? It's just hit Beatrice, because Beatrice is not only a big issue with Fiendsmith now, but it's also an issue on its own where people make. I mean, just be able to send 2 cards to the graveyard, any 2 cards is just very broken. This card shouldn't exist. It needs to be banned for sure. Same thing with this Moon of Closed Heaven. Pac and Samurai, if you, I'm sure everyone's seen their videos, but the biggest thing they brought up was that this card, printing it as a common, was printed as a common for a reason, to be a gimmick. It's not an expensive card. It's just it's going to get banned. I mean, the Fiendsmith engine should be used by decks that actually use Fiends and are useful, and banning this is going to then limit every deck that can't just abuse the Fiendsmith engine. So I think this card definitely needs to go just completely banned. There's no reason I think that's going. Calamity, it's been an issue for so long that, but it hasn't been hit because it's not a big issue. Only certain decks can use it. I don't think it's a big issue in Centurion because Centurion, they're very vulnerable. By the time that they get him on the field, they don't have really any other negates, so you can easily stop the Calamity by uh, imperving or forbidden dropletting on the Crimson Dragon. I don't think he's that big an issue, but what's going to be happening is when the Blue Eyes support comes out, they're going to be able to cheat out him when they already have the Maggie on the field plus the new Synchro 12, the Spirit Ultimate Dragon. So you got 2 negates right there to stop that, are going to prevent your opponent where they can't imperv the Crimson Dragon, they can't Forbidden Droplet it, possibly depending on what they send. So, yeah, I think that was the perfect time to go right before the Blue Eyes deck came out. I mean, they did a Master Duel before Centurion came out. They hit this because it's best 1-on-1, but in a best 3 of 3 format, with how many negates the Blue Eyes decks can get on the field, there's no need for this. You get rid of this, and then the Synchro 12 people can run is like the Cosmic Blazer Dragon that's just a negate and not a Lingering Floodgate. I mean, it's time that it's about time that this card needs to go. Right? Uh, Appaloosa, I agree that I think Appaloosa should go because she's too generic, right? Um, and yes, you can out her and get rid of her with cards like Imperv and Droplet and Talents. You can take her with Talents, but you kind of have to draw that out for it. And having possibly 4 negates on the field is huge. Now, board breakers do break her as well, but I think the problem is when you have both IP and Apo in the format, it's too much. I think one of them needs to go. I don't think IP is the one that needs to go. I think Apollos is the bigger problem. And Konami's kind of already taken that route, like getting rid of negates, right? Um, and even though she's not an omni negate, it's just the possibility of 2 plus 4 negates. Yes, you could summon a strong enough monster to attack over her, but it's a lot of decks are going to suffer. I mean, one Appaloosa is going to stop an entire deck from even comboing or doing anything, and I think it's too much when you have a card that's stopping an entire deck from going through. Most decks, cannot get through this. I could see her staying. I don't think she's a big issue, but I think that's going to be the hit over IP. I don't think IP needs to be hit because IP going into something else like Sprint, SP Little Knight, Unicorn, which doesn't happen anymore because of SP, but it's I don't think she's a big issue. It's just she's a big issue when she's paired with a card like Appaloosa. Also, IP being to use to go into Underworld Goddess, into Crusadia. I think she's very well balanced card. I don't think IP needs to go at all. Also, what IP does is for a lot of combo decks, when you have uneven cards in the field that you can't use for material to go into something that's part of your combo, she's just a way to get rid of 2 bodies in the field to get something that makes sense. So getting rid of IP, I think, is going to really hurt people when they make mistakes with their combo. Where IP, just like Apo, is a way to kind of clean up your board to actually get into something. But I think IP should be the one that stays over Appaloosa. So IP, I would say, I'm taking off and will be banned. And the next thing instead, same thing as well with IP. I don't think Albion needs to go. Sanctifier, he is a broken card, not being able to be targeted. But Branded's not this huge deck that's like hurting people. And the thing is, when you have uh, cards in the format that prevent that take away the graveyard and bestials that can hit the graveyard, and like something in particular where I think Call by the Grave is going to move up on the list. I don't think this needs to go because it is generically a better good card. Where you can bring back cards, and I don't think it's intended for the puppet lock, right? It's not intended for that. This card, when it was originally made, I think it's more intended to give you an extra fusion summon, to possibly go into, like, I would always use it to go into Dragoon, or bring out like another fusion monster during my opponent's turn by summoning cards from my graveyard or their graveyard, right? Um, so I don't think Albion needs to go. I don't think Albion's a problem. I think what needs to go is these two cards, Gimmick Puppet and the Idol, the Supreme Magical Force. This is what was hit in Master Duel, and I think that was the great hit, right? Because Gimmick Puppet decks do not need this card in their deck, so I think it's not an issue. So these are the only two cards that can actually sent off of the Granganil line to enable the puppet lock. Now, yes, you can use Brand Infusion to send Jalgan, and there's a couple other cards too, the Ra's Disciple. But then you're pretty much wasting your Brand Infusion on committing just to the lock. Where with these two cards being the format, you can still build a board in Branded with Mirror Jade plus possibly Predaplant or another fusion, and then still Sanctifier lock on top of that, which is too broken. Where if you just overcommit to just the puppet lock, it's going to be easier for your opponent to stop you. And even if they don't stop you, when it comes back, if it does turn skip, you're not building this oppressive board that's going to be too difficult for you to OTK them next turn. So I don't think Albion needs to go. I think these two. So that's really it as far as the ban portion. So if we're looking at the limited next, the first thing we're looking at here, right, is Protoss, I think, should stay at 1, right? I think it was a really good hit. I mean, even though I hated it because I was a big Vanadium player, I think getting rid of um, Baron and Savage was good because they're moving in a direction to get rid of these Omni Negates and move towards more monster floodgates that are easy to interact with. Where, I mean, Calamity, yes, a monster floodgate, but you can't respond to him. That's this biggest. If you could respond to him, then I understand him staying. But the fact that he can't respond to, he needs to go. He definitely needs to go. Protoss. So with Protoss, yes, it's an annoying floodgate, but if you just save your hand trap for that, you can stop it. If you know your opponent's playing Protoss, you can stop it. I mean, the first duel in a best 3 format, I don't think he should exist in a best 1-of-1 format, but still, even in a best 1-of-1 format, in Master Duel OCG, you don't know what your opponent's running. So the Protoss lock, like, is it going to work? You don't know. It's like a 50-50 or probably less than that. But in best 2 or 3, if you know your opponent's running Protoss, then you just got to save your hand trap for it. Also, the biggest thing with Protoss is Nib beats it. I mean, when I actually went to a YCS after Baron got banned, and I put Protoss in there along with Colossus, like it was a world of difference. Like, not having Baron and having the negate versus Protoss, like I lost so much because by the time you would get to Protoss on the field, you would be nibbed before that every single time. And even so, if your opponent's got nib in their hand, and you know you're going Protoss, as soon as you summon Protoss, they can just nib you there and activate Nibiru before you even activate his effect. So having Protoss, it doesn't auto win you games. I think there's enough hand traps, and he's interactable enough that he doesn't need to be hit. I mean, he helps rogue decks. He helps a lot of rogue decks actually win. I think it was a good thing bringing him back at 1, especially just in the best 1-of-3 format. And Nib was just an example there. That doesn't need to be hit. Nib can stay at 3, obviously. Pot of Prosperity, I think, needs to go to 1. Uh, this is more of a hit. So the hits for Tempai is, I think this is a good hit for Tempai, is bringing this to 1. The other hit for Tempai is the field spell. So I think these are the only 2 hits that need to go to Tempai, is Pot plus Shifter too. Shifter, I think, needs to be hit, which I'm going to go over in the semi-limited list. But I think these are 2 of the 3 hits to Tempai, is hitting Pot to 1, and Singing and Summoning to 1. Skill Drain is just too much of an issue. I mean, yes, if we're getting rid of Flame Virgin Hand Snake Eyes. It's not as big an issue in Snake Eyes, but then they still have Black Witch. Any deck that can play Black Witch can get rid of this. The White Forest deck is going to be very good now once they hit Yubel and Snake Eyes. So we need to get this down to one. One's more than enough. This, I mean, lingering Floodgate monsters like Protos and Colossus, I think are better when they can be interacted with. I mean, this is a lingering floodgate, but it can't be interacted with, so not healthy for the format. Protos can be interacted with. I'm going to talk about another card that I think should come back to one that can be interacted with. That's even easier to interact with than Protos and Colossus. Um, but I think yeah, the spells and traps like that are lingering shouldn't exist. There's no way. And as far as hitting you, Bell, I think the only really two hits we need are just bringing, probably just opening spirits. But the thing is, if you bring opening spirits just to one, then you can just play Dark Beckoning Beast at three and get spirits anyway. So I think they both need to go to one. And plus, they're older cards that if they hit those, it's not going to impact Konami sales, which is an issue. As far as Runic, I think just the Fountain down to one. That's what it is in Master Duel OCG. Having multiple of these, it's too much. I think if someone has the out to get rid of the fountain, then it pretty much shuts down the whole runic combo. Tip all the other cards. I don't think they need to be touched at all. Just the field spell, and then heavy storm. It's back at one, and everything else. I think it's healthy for this card to be back at one for sure. Um, then as far as cards, other cards, talking about the other cards. So these are all the hits, right? And then Protoss wasn't a hit. That was just keeping it at one. um, but as far as cards to bring back, I think it's time Kid Callus should come back, right? So Teal'c's isn't anything special right now. I mean, it's a low tier 2 deck. You got none of the Millers. The Millers don't deserve to come back. That's too much. The Shufflers, maybe you could ban them straight up, but I think just the Shufflers being at one each is fine. And I mean, Teal'c's plus uh, um, Lightsworn Teal'c's, I think this is what's going to make the deck tier 1. And there's enough hand traps and high decks. I mean, Tiamat is not putting up anything impressive. With Baron gone, Savage gone, they're not putting up any huge negates. This is kind of giving the deck the ability to play through hand traps. And I think it's time that we need to experiment with Kit Callus at one. I mean, I think it's, she's not that broken a card anymore with everything else hit, especially if Beatrice is getting hit too. Beatrice hit and the Miller's hit. I think she's fair to come back. And along with that coming back, I think another thing that's going to help encourage 60 card decks and graveyard decks is just grass is greener at one. Right? I don't think being more than one is too much. Maybe two at some point once they experiment at one, but I think bringing back at one and having three thrust, I think would be great. And that's going to give people the incentive to play 60 card decks and board breaker decks again, not 18, 20 hand traps, is playing like gas, because I would argue, so my biggest argument of why this last format was the worst format of all time since I've been playing, and I've been playing this. I mean, Pendulum format was terrible as well, and that was my second least favorite format. But this is probably the worst format I think, and it's because not just because of Snake Eyes, Yubel, and Tempai being the only three decks that you can play, but it's because of the 18-20 hand traps. There's no engine, there's no gas decks. It's just, oh, do you have the hand trap? If you have it, do I have the cross out? I don't have the cross out. So then it's a turn, skip to next turn. It's just, there's no healthy play because of that. And I think bringing Kikalos and Grass back to one is going to promote more actual fun play and interchanging play and not this turn skip 18-20 hand trap play. And speaking of another card to promote healthy hand traps, getting rid of hand traps and bringing back more board breakers, which no one wants to hear this, but I think Cashier Risehart needs to come back to one. Okay, I think it's time. He's been out for a while. So when he initially got hit, I understand them bringing Unicorn to two, getting rid of Diablos. Diablos should never come back. But I would love to hear everyone's comment on him more than anything else that I've mentioned before. Where Risehart, since he was banned, I think the format has been garbage, complete garbage, because that having him in the format is what promoted people to play board breakers, Raigeki, Lightning Storms, Dark Holes, Talents. And since he's left, it's just been everyone just plays nonstop hand traps, which is fine. I mean, if you prefer hand traps over, which hand traps can stop Cashier too. If you want to play nonstop hand traps, one imperv can stop him. Hand trapping a Cashier, I mean, Cashier is not this crazy combo deck. If you have the right hand traps in your hand, you're going to stop them from getting to a Rizard. Um, a Rizard, he's less of an issue than like Dimension Shifter, right? Because he can be interacted with so well. There's so many cards that beat a Rizard, but him in the format, it's just a meta checker for all these heavy graveyard decks. Also, like I said, it helps promote more board breaker approach, more engine approach. Because the thing is, if you're playing a 60 card deck that's running gas and graveyard effects like Tealmans, and they go, oh well, if Rise Heart's in the format, how do I beat that? How do I beat that? Well, kaiju's. I mean, Tealmans there's kaiju's they can run that can get through it if they're running talents anyways to kind of get through it. You run 3 thrust to get the grass and then a talents to take it, right? They're triple talents. So board breaker decks, engine decks, even if you're not running the hand traps, um, can easily beat can out a Rise Art too. And I mean, also what beats a Rise Art, which that's what I've seen in a lot of lists where they're saying, well, if a Rise Art's coming back, then we need to limit Fenrir down to 1. No, because what one Fenrir beats a Rise Art, and Fenrir, I just put it here as an example. This I think Fenrir should stay at 3, right? Uh, there's no reason Fenrir can be run in Tealmans. Fenrir can be run Scareclaw, any deck. You can run 3 Fenrir, and having 3 Fenrir is just, he's such a good board breaker as it is, and a good like mini boss monster, that having him in the format is not only good for Cashier, but it's good for every deck being able to out Arise Art, right? So I think I'm putting him, take him off the list. He should stay at 3 for sure. And same thing with Talents. Talents doesn't need to be hit. I think Talents need to stay at 3, especially with how many hand traps, and now the new, right here, we got the new Mokshami cards coming out. This is the new one's already out. We got Faruis or something coming out too. So you're going to have 6 ways, 6 different mini maxis. And if you hit Talents, it's going to make the format terrible with those cards coming out. You need a way to kind of get through them. Talents, I don't think should go. Talents, another way to out a Rise Art. So it doesn't need to go. A good hit for Kashtira if Ariza comes back is bringing Birth back to 1, taking it down to 1. I don't think that's going to happen when Ariza comes back, but that would be a good hit if you're going to hit anything with Kashtira. Hit Kashtira Unicorn or Birth, but Birth is probably the best hit because that kind of hurts the consistency of the deck where you have to make sure that if you only got Unicorn, you got to get the Theosis. If Theosis gets ashed, then you're not getting to a Rise Art. But Birth at 1 would be good. I don't think it's gonna be hit, but I think that's a good hit right there. Other 2 things I think should come back is I think it's time Predator Plant comes back to 1. There's no insane fusion monster you're making anymore that's going to lock you out. I think this is a good card to come back to 2. Even being able to use its Super Poly effect to kind of out some boards. If you want to send Super Poly, I think it's great. I think he should come back. Also, Electromite, this is going to be another heated topic, but and I hate Pendulum. Like I said, Pendulum was my second least favorite format of all time. But we got to give Pendulum something. This is a great card for them. They're not putting up without Baron and Savage. They're not putting up any huge impressive board. And if we're going to have a Rise Art in the format, and these heavy graveyard decks and engine decks, and Tempai, Yubel, and Snake Eyes is still going to be good even with these hits. So I think let's give Pendulum their shot with this. Also, another big reason why I think we can bring back Electromite here and encourage Pendulum again is we got Blue Eyes support coming out. So I think bringing back Electromite is going to be a smart decision by Konami, because then it's going to give people and Duelist interest to play the Blue Eye support because what shuts down Pendulum? Well, that's when I started playing again in 2016 as soon as Blue Eye Spirit Dragon came out. It's like, oh, I can beat this stupid Pendulum stuff with Blue Eye Spirit Dragon. And he's going to be a huge interval play and role of um, the Blue Eyes strategy is having three of them in the deck and always having him on the field. So people are like, well, if I play the Blue Eyes deck, I can stop Pendulum. So I think having him and keeping him at three. This is not going to be limited. I'm just showing it as an example here. But bring Electromite back to one. It's going to encourage people to buy Blue Eye support when it comes out. Um, so now going to semi-limited list, right? So Shifter needs to be hit for sure. I honestly think if Arise Heart's coming back, Shifter should go to one or completely be banned, right? I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to go to two because they still want to give other Shifter decks that are not just Kashtira that kind of surprise factor of, ooh, I drew the Shifter, I got the win. Other reason too is I think there's going to be other things in the format that are going to come back and change their on the list to stop Shifter. So I think it's fine being at two. I don't think it needs to be less than that. The only decks that it's going to really hurt is going to be obviously decks that are playing like maybe like a 60 card, like I said, Tealman's deck. Yeah, I mean a 60 card Tealman's deck or something like that. Arise Heart's no issue for them because you're going to be playing board breakers. You're going to be playing kaijus. Shifter more a problem because it's this lingering floodgate that you have to have that out for. But I think the other card that they'll play is like Gamma, which I would go over here in the unlimited list. But I think Gamma is your other out to it. Other reason why I think Shifter needs to go is because the Mokchami cards, right? So the Mokchami cards you can pair with Shifter, and I think what they're going to end up doing is kind of like what they did. They started getting wiser and doing here in Master Duel is like when they know there's going to be a problem card that pairs with something new coming out, they're just going to they're going to hit it or they're going to change something. And these Mokchami cards, I mean, everybody says that this one, the new one that came out, it's not a problem, but go watch the recent YCS, go watch Nationals. People won duels because of this card, especially Tempai, and they're not going to change this card anytime soon. It just came out. It's a secret. It's making them a lot of money. The new one's going to be even more expensive. They're going to hit Shifter's going to get hit, so it doesn't get paired with this because you can use this under Shifter. And again, that's another reason why. Not only thinking about the players that are going to have both Shifter and Mokchami in their hand, why it's a problem, why I think Shifter's going to be hit. But the other reason too is because then if you do get Shiftered and you use Mokchami, it's like Shifter's not as big of a deal. So it's not with Mokchami being the format. Not only is Shifter more unhealthy and more toxic, but also Shifter's not as big of a problem because they can use Mokchami under it. Where like Arise Heart's going to be a bigger problem for people that are relying on the graveyard than with Mokchami because you can't you're not going to get those draws as they're summoning, and you have to kind of deal with him in another way other than using Mokchami. Where Mokchami, if someone shifters you, like Ritual Beast, they shift to you, and then you Mokchami them, you're going to draw into the nib. You're going to draw into that. Where with just a Rise Art with Kashtira, they can just end on 4 summons, and then you're not going to get too many draws off of the Mokchami or the new one. And then same thing here with Crossout. I put it there here as an example, talking about with the Mokchami. So Mokchami needs to obviously stay at 3. That's not going anywhere. I don't think Crossout's going to get hit. I think it needs to stay at 3 because of the Mokchamis. We need to have ways to stop it, and I don't think Konami is going to make the mistake of promoting this whole, oh, I drew the max C, so now I auto win. It's better especially for TCG, even if you're not maining the crossouts, you're having them to side in for when you know your opponent's running the Mokchamis and if you're going first, right? Also, I think they're really going to, just like I talked with Electromite and with the Blue Eyes Spear Dragon, I think they're really going to push the Blue Eyes support, and that new Blue Eyes deck does not play well through many hand traps, especially Nib. So I think in order to make that deck successful, they need to keep Cross on the format and have it at 3, especially. So I don't think it's going to get hit. I think it's going to stay at 3. This is Magnamon is something that I really don't know. Like, I think It's not going to be touched. I think it's going to stay right at 1, right? But I think it would be good to come to 2 because Dragon Link's been hit so much as it is. I think something else needs to change with Dragon Link to make it better, but I think Magnemite coming to 2 is another way to hit Yubel rather than worrying about hitting um, any of the other Yubel cards. And this is the biggest argument I'm trying to make with this ban list that I think Konami should do, and I think they finally will do because they're taking so much time to learn from the mistakes. Is rather than banning and limiting everything, let's kind of bring things back that hurt the existing the powerful decks that are going to hurt them. And Magmart's going to hurt. That will hurt Yubel big time. And also it's going to help Dragon Link. And it will help, keep Tenpai somewhat relevant. Because the thing is with Tenpai, Sengen summoning is what makes the deck broken, right? Is because not being even giving your opponent the ability to interact with them during the main phase. If you take this away, you can kind of stop your opponent during the main phase before they just skip the battle phase. So Magnemite is going to it'll kind of make up for that, giving them another dragon in their hand and relying on their dragons to combo during the main phase and then go to battle phase. This helps Dragon Link. This also will help the Blue Eyes strategy somewhat as well. Not too much, but a little bit. It could make the Blue Eyes deck possible to be a 60 card deck as putting a Bestial Engine in it. So something I definitely experiment with, but I would not consider running the Blue Eyes deck at 60 unless Magnemite was at 2, and that Chaos Spaces I think is the next thing that's going to kind of change too. Call by the Grave I think is going to go to 2 for sure. I think that's 100%. These two I'm not sure about. Like I said, is Shifter is either going to be a 3, it's going to get banned, or possibly 2. But I think 2 is the right hit. But I think it's probably going to get the right thing probably to do is Arise Art to 1, Shifter completely banned, but probably what's going to be more or less is this going to 2 or 1. But just going to 1, I think, is too much. I think they'll leave it at 2 just because Konami seems to like Shifter. But he shouldn't exist for sure. He should be banned. He's a way bigger issue than Arizer. But I think it stays at 2 because Call By comes at 2. So if you keep Cross Out at 3 and then you put Call By at 2, because Cross Out, like everyone's saying, Cross Out's broken. Well, you have to play the cards in your deck for Crossout to work. So Crossout getting hit doesn't make any sense to me at all because you have to waste that space in your deck to have its targets. Call By is way more broken, and Call By could be used as a hand trap as well, and like a interruption during your opponent's turn if you don't have to use it to stop a hand trap. So Call By being at 2 is great because then you can leave Shifter at 2. And then also you're ready for the Mokchami cards as having this at 2. So Red Reboot, this is something I think's gonna go right back to 2. It's completely banned, but I think they're just gonna put it at 2 because there is no like insanely popular expensive trap deck anymore. I think it's at 2 in Master Duel. It's not a problem. I think it promotes more healthy, fun gameplay of someone that wants to counter a trap strategy. And if you waste your main deck or side deck spots putting this in, it's not doing anything against the majority of decks. So I don't think there's any need for this to be banned at all. It should be at 1, but I think really at least at 1. But I think just bring it back to 2. And the other things that are at 1, bringing it to 2. I think Change Your Heart comes back to 1, especially if Arise Heart's going in the format. That's giving you more healthy board breaker approach. Same thing with Red Reboot, which I didn't mention, is Red Reboot it's used as like a board breaker. So these cards are going to really encourage the board breaker route versus the hand trap route. Right. Same thing with Change Your Heart being at 2, right? And the Mokchamis, I think the Mokchamis do that too. Is the Mokchamis being the format are encouraging board breaker route versus hand traps because I don't think anybody wants to see an 18-20. I mean, 9-10 hand traps is fine, but an 18-20 hand trap format makes me want to vomit. Same thing with Snatch Steal. Let's bring that to 2. This I kind of put here as kind of something I would like to see tried at 2. Monster Reborn. I don't think they will, but I'm going to keep it there. I think it should be at 2 because the thing is, yes, target any monster. It's not once per turn, so you can draw 2 monster reports. But the thing is, like, Konami, they said it in a lot of videos, is they like to promote luck. Like you just anyone being able to pick up a deck and play it and not being like the most skillful player ever. And with Monster Reborn, it's not searchable, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no way you can search this card. So if you happen to draw two, cool. Wow. Then you're winning because of that. But if it was a searchable card, I would understand it being um, you know staying at one or completely banned. But it's not searchable, so whatever. As far as cards to completely unlimit, I mean Colossus, just bring it to three. I mean, yes, you could go to two first, but this card's not a problem. I mean, yeah, it can't be destroyed. So when it's in the true Thunder Dragon deck, it's way more of an issue than a Riser, because a Riser can be just destroyed with Dark Hole. If they leave an attack mode, you can destroy it with Lightning Storm. Raigeki destroys it, right? Um, Colossus can protect itself, but Imperv, Dark Ruler no more, any of that stops it. Any of these board breakers, stop it. Um, you can stop your opponent from getting into it, but this would actually make the Thunder Dragon deck playable again, having Colossus at three. I don't think there's any reason he's not that. He came to one. He's not an issue. I mean, Protoss is more of an issue than Colossus, but I don't think either of them are an issue. Protoss stays at one. I don't think there's any reason he needs to go any higher. But Colossus can just go right to three. I mean, it's not a problem. I mean, I think if anything, Colossus could even be more problem than a Rise Harp. As a Rise Harp, he said you can destroy. The only thing I was protecting Rise Harp before is, again, this is Pot of Prosperity being at three. You could send cards like Infitrack to attach underneath him to protect him from destruction. But with this being at one, are people even going to play in a Kashtira? Maybe. You could play maybe three Thrust in this, but why not? So, like, if a Rise Heart, Cashier, they don't put up no negates. They don't put anything up for protection. Yes, you can play crossouts, but that's it. Like, the Cashier and Tearlaments are very power crept. They're not putting up anything impressive anymore. Let's let these decks actually have people have some fun with these decks and try to compete with the current meta for sure. Now Gamma, I think this is just going to go right to three, just because the thing is, now hear me out here. Everyone's like, oh, it's just a two to first. Three's too much. It's going to be the most powerful hand trap. Yes, but the thing is, in Master Duel, when it's at two, the fact that we know it's in the format it's at two, I don't think he's much of a problem. The only reason I think Gamma's a problem is because of Baron. So it's a free Baron getting Gamma on the field. But um, everybody knows that. So when I'm playing, I don't activate a monster effect until I really know my opponent already has something on the field. I mean, sometimes you can't avoid it, and they just got the Gamma, and you're out of luck. But them being able to negate and destroy one card, I mean, most decks can just kind of play through that anyways. So I don't think Gamma being at three is an issue. Also, I think Gamma being at three is what's going to be healthy for stopping Shifter. So that's how you counter the Shifter decks: is you let Tearlaments and Yubel synchro decks. You let White Forest, Dragonlink, all those decks play Gamma at three, and that's their way to out Shifter. They have three Gamma and Call By, and I think Gamma is healthier than Call By or Crossout, because for Gamma you have to play Driver, you have to play the one brick, and Gamma, like you think like in Master Duel, oh, I played two Gamma just to stop Maxi. Well, they're not going to Maxi you until you have a monster in the field. Like nobody falls for it. And if they do fall for that, then I got the surprise factor. Gamma's in my hand. So I think Gamma kind of plays into what Konami wants, is they want people to win out of those whole surprise factors. And that's what this is promoting, compared to where Call by Grave you can activate anytime, Crossout you can activate anytime. So um, I said I still don't. I think Crossout's a fair card. I don't think. Let's see, go back to him. Nope. Crossout. I don't think. Because Crossout requires the setup in your card, and hitting cards that require certain setup, I don't think are viable to be hit. Like same thing with, like I said, mentioning Arise. I mean, if any of these two, I would think Arise Art should come back before Kick Callus, because Kick Callus be able to add any Tealman's card, and mill five it's pretty broken, right? But it's just like so the deck's not putting up anything impressive right now. That's a lot, right? But cross out, same thing with Baron getting banned. Is Baron, generic 10, right? Savage, you have to have a link in the graveyard, so it requires more setup. I said the only reason I think call by should come to 2 is just because of the Mochami cards. We need a way for people to out those, and that's your way to deal with shifter too. Is if Konami's like they understand, hey, shifter's a problem for decks now. There's so many more decks that can play shifter. There's decks that can play it with the Mochami card. So rather than just completely banning it or limiting it, let's just bring it down to 2. And then let's bring back call by to 2. Let's leave cross on the format, and then let's bring gamma to 3. I think that's the way to kind of resolve it. Next thing, unlimited Pankratops. Yeah, I mean, more board breaker approach. He's not an issue. Bring him to 3. Ancient Fairy Dragon to 3. I mean, I don't even know if they need to touch it. Everyone's only playing at 1 anyways, but if they want to put it there, fine. I mean, that's not really a big surprise factor. I think Chaos Space needs to go to 3, right? So Magnamut at 2, that's like I said, that's debatable, right? It could stay. It could stay at 1. I don't think that's like yes, we need to bring it to 2, but I think just Magnamut to 2 is what's like I said, is helping combat against Yubel without completely hitting Yubel because Yubel is still so new. Snake Eyes has been out for so long. Let's hit that freaking deck, right? Let's just ban the freaking block dragon here, the Flame Urge. But Yubel, I think the better way to approach Yubel is bringing back things that hurt the deck, like Magnamut or Rise Heart. Those are the things that do it. Bringing back, Heavy Storm to 1. Things that can, Lightning Storm to 3. Things that can destroy their back row, right? I think that's the way you combat Yubel. But Chaos Space, I think, is a very fair card to be at 3. I mean, it only works in certain decks, and it requires you to send a card from your hand. I don't know why. I don't think the only reason this card was hit to 1 was because of Worlds. Maybe they might wait till the next ban list, so that way people can't play this in the World Championship, or they might not make this card, this ban list, effective till after the World Championship. That I understand, but this card, it only works in certain decks. It requires like so much setup. I don't, I think this should be a 3. Like give Dragonlink something. It's a great deck. Dragonlink's crap now. I mean, they're not putting up any negates. You can beat them with Nib. There's no reason for it to be there. Same thing with Lightning Storm is. I mean, yeah, this card could be. It's great against back row against some people if they do it right. But again, it's just like Gamma. It's the surprise factor. You know, it makes people like, same thing with Imperv, setting Imperv in a specific column, and then they activate a card. They go, oh, Imperv. Now I Solemn Judgment your card, or I negated your monster, plus I Solemn Judgment your spell card that's there. Or they activate a card in the Imperv column. I think Lightning Storm is a surprise factor where it gives people incentive to try when they're going first to put cards in defense mode because they don't want to go bam Lightning Storm. Like I beat so many Flandreese matchups because they expect me to play Lightning Storm, where I actually mained 1 Lightning Storm in my Manadium deck, and they left all their Flandreese monsters in attack mode. It's a huge surprise factor, which I think that's what Konami wants to encourage and promote, is this whole surprise factor of, oh my god, you mained a Lightning Storm? And I mean, there's no reason to be at 2. I mean, I think 3 is good, getting rid of the whole back row. If you draw it, you draw it. Plus, it's a searchable card from Thrust. No reason. All the Dragon Rulers go back to 3. I mean, no one's really playing them. I mean, do you need to bring them back to 3? Is it going to promote anyone buying stuff? I don't think they're coming out in tins, but hey, it was a fun deck before people like it. This is something I think that's really good to go to 3. I mean, it's at 1 now, I believe, and they're talking about 2, but I think just bring miscellaneous Saurus to 3. It's a very cheap deck. It's another rogue deck people like. It makes the deck actually somewhat competitive. Just bring it to 3. Same thing with, the Armor Knight. I mean, it's not really used in anything. You can just bring it to 3. So again, here is showing the whole list now that I took those stuff off. We're talking about bands, Flamebird, Beatrice, Moon, Calamity, Apollousa, and then the 2 turn skips cards that Branded uses. And Limited, we're keeping Protoss there. We're hitting Prosperity, Sanguine Summoning, Skill Drain, Dark Beckoning Beast, and Opening Spirit Gates. Runic Fountain, we're bringing back Heavy Storm to 1. We're bringing Callus to 1, bringing Grass to 1, Arise Art to 1, and then Predator Plant and Electromite. And for semi-limits, hitting Shifter. Magnamut, like I said, this is out of this whole list. This is probably the thing I'm most unsure of. Probably actually the couple things I'm most unsure of is going to be probably Magnemite. I don't think they'll touch, and Predaplan and Electromite. I don't think they'll touch, but well, this I can think more than anything just because of the Blue Eyes stuff coming out. It will encourage that, but Predaplant. I mean, it's good to come back to one, but will they do it? I mean, it's not going to really promote anything. This will promote people to play the Blue Eye Spirit Dragon. Arise Art will promote people to play hand traps. Kikalos will promote people to play grass and play 60 card decks and gas, and gas decks and all engine decks and not, hand traps. So, and I think that's what, like I said, right now more than anything, the format needs interactions, fun engine deck gameplay, not 18, 20 hand traps, right? And call by for the Mokchami cards to promote again more board breakers and getting rid of the hand traps and Red Reboot. The two Snatch Steal cards, Change Your Heart plus Snatch Steal and Monster Reborn, and then Unlimited I went over. Okay, would love to see everyone's comments on this. Is this profile or is this ban list realistic? I would say 90%. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty confident that a lot of this, I probably bet that a lot of this is going to be pretty accurate. But they're probably more of a wish list or what they should do list than what they're going to do. But I'm confident that they will do stuff like this now just because they've taken long. I mean, there's been so many ban lists before where I didn't even bother to make a prediction because I'm like, well, I know exactly what they're going to do. They're just going to do what makes them money and what the community's complaining about, right? Here, I think they've done a lot of research. They've taken all this time to look at what's happening in the OCG, what's happening in Master Duel, and they're like, hey, you got a best of 3 format, so let's do things that are going to make people want to play the game and not quit anymore. So, yeah, this is my list I came up with. Love to hear everyone's comments and get some interactions on this. I feel pretty confident this is a pretty fair list. I don't know. I'd love to see if anyone's like, enraged by this because, I understand that most of the comments are going to be, oh, well, this ain't realistic at all. This ain't happening, right? Just because you're jaded by the track record of Konami. But let's be optimistic about. They've had all this time. Can they do things right? But what I would really love to hear is if anyone really hates this list. They're like, oh, this sucks. Like I will not. If someone's so enraged by this list that they will not play, I love to hear the reasoning why because I don't see anything on here that makes it unhealthy gameplay for sure. I mean, the biggest thing people are going to complain about is obviously Kit Kalos coming to 1 and Arizar coming to 1 and probably Electromite coming to 1. But like I said, Electromite coming to 1, remember, we're going to have Blue Eyes to counter that to prevent people from playing that. Arizar coming to 1, pots at 1, you can destroy it with anything. Gamma 3, 1 Gamma is going to beat it. 1 Fenrir is going to beat it. Kit Kalos, yeah, probably more broken, but the thing is, like, Tealmans ain't doing anything special, But guys, those are probably the only arguments I'm going to probably hear, and probably people aren't going to want Protoss everybody probably wants Protoss banned, but you just got to run 3 Nibiru. Nibiru I think is probably the best hand trap ever should run, and that's why I loved, even though I hated it because I love playing Vanadium, but Baron getting banned makes Nibiru a threat again. And without the negates, so like Protoss, I mean, you run 3 Nibiru, even in a board breaker deck, running a 60-card deck, I'd probably still run 3 Nibiru just to, be ready for, something like this. But anyways, please let me know what you guys think. Took a little bit of time to come up with this list, and I think it's pretty fair and would make the format a lot more enjoyable. And also, when do you guys think we're actually going to get the ban list? Friday, Saturday? I'm hoping at some point before the World Championship. All right, peace out. Appreciate the comments and the watch.